The NFL is a what have you done for me lately league, and as fans, we often apply that to players, especially when they are on the verge of a make or break year or potentially on the verge of getting cut. However, that also applies to head coaches, and if a few NFL head coaches' teams do not perform the way the front office and fans expect them to this year, then there is a good chance they are fired at season's end, meaning they are on the hot seat entering the 2022 NFL season. And a little spoiler, we are not including any rookie NFL head coaches, surprising I know, as unless they perform astronomically bad, think 0-17 or 1-16, then they are going to be good entering next year. And before we get started, I do want to take a second and give a big shout out to today's sponsor, PrizePicks. PrizePicks is both an easy and fun way to play daily fantasy sports and is available in most US states. There are countless options you can choose from for a player, for their upcoming game, or for a season-long outlook. They already have the NFL Week 1 props out and season props, and one choice I love is Max Crosby's sack total. If Max gets 10 throughout the season, which in that division, it's very realistic, the over hits. And my guy Justin Jefferson's season-long total is 9.5 touchdowns. So if both of these hit, a simple $20 bet wins me $60. And as you can see, there are plenty of options to choose from here, and if you sign up for PrizePicks using code ANALYSIS, you will receive a 100% deposit match up to $100. Click the link in the description below, and again, a big thank you to PrizePicks for sponsoring today's video. And now we discuss head coaches on the hot seat entering the 2022 NFL season. And we are starting today's video with Seattle Seahawks head coach Pete Carroll, and there's multiple layers to this as the Seahawks have been incredibly successful under Carroll's guidance in his 12-year tenure dating back to when he was hired from USC in 2010. They've had one playoff win in the past 5 years, and despite a regular season record since 2017 of 49-32, they've won a singular playoff game in that span, and the playoff win came back in 2019 against the Philadelphia Eagles, and that was the Jadeveon Clowney-Carson Wentz game in which Carson Wentz went down very early, and it was Josh McCown attempting to lead the Eagles to victory. And dating back to 2016, Seattle's other playoff win in the past 6 seasons, it came against the Detroit Lions, who have one playoff win in the Super Bowl era. I fully expect Dan Campbell to help change that, but the reality is Seattle should have won both of these games. And the point here is Seattle has been good over the past 5 years, and to be clear, a 49-32 record over those 5 seasons is nothing to scoff at, but those are games, the playoff games that is, they should have won. And on top of it, Pete is not a young head coach and will be 71 years old this fall, and the outlook of their franchise at the moment doesn't exactly look the best when being compared to other teams in their division. Now, I don't think Seattle finishes 3-14 this year or anything drastically bad, but are they going to let a then 72-year-old head coach next year go into a full rebuild if Geno Smith and Drew Lock do not work out the way a lot of people don't think they will? I would be incredibly surprised if they did, and they should move on sooner rather than later. Pete would be 73 in the 2024 season, and if they draft a quarterback in the early part of the draft next year, which, by the way, is entirely possible, I would like to think they bring in a new head coach to work with that quarterback, rather than a head coach who is on his way out the door by the start of that said quarterback's second or third season. And the NFC West is a very talented division, and there is a good chance the Seahawks miss the playoffs this fall. And with back-to-back seasons of missing the playoffs, combined with a head coach who is very old, these two factors most definitely point to Pete Carroll being on the hot seat at the start of the 2022 NFL season. Next up is Matt Rhule of the Carolina Panthers, who became the Panthers head coach back in 2020, and since then the Panthers have just 10 wins over those 2 seasons. He has a career record of 10-23, and the worst part for Matt Rhule is how not just one of his 2 seasons ended, but both. They were 3-2 through 5 games in each year and started out last year 3-0. And when you break that down even further, it was 3 wins against the Jets, Saints, and Texans. No disrespect, Saints fans, it was more of a comment at both the Jets and Texans, who finished the season with top 5 overall picks in this past year's draft. They finished 2021 with a 2-12 record over the final 14 games of the 2021 season, with one of those wins coming against the Atlanta Falcons, who had a top 10 pick in this year's draft and beat a grand total of 0 playoff teams last year. And they also beat the Arizona Cardinals on the road, who was quarterbacked that day by, buckle up here folks, Colt McCoy and Chris Streveler, and Carolina will now be quarterbacked by Baker Mayfield this fall, which is without a doubt the best quarterback Matt Rule has had since becoming the head coach of the Panthers. And having Baker as your team's quarterback can be viewed as both a positive and a negative, because when Baker's on, he is a solid quarterback, and the Panthers would be a dark horse playoff team within the NFC. But when Baker's off, he's off, and we more than saw that in 2021 during what turned out to be his final games as a Cleveland Brown. And whether Baker plays well in 2022 is obviously to be determined, but no matter how he performs, the point stands. Matt Rule's job is on the line entering the 2022 season, and we will see how he and the Panthers do this year. And from back-to-back NFC head coaches on the hot seat, we go to a bit of an uncommon head coach on the hot seat, and it is Frank Reich of the Indianapolis Colts. I'm sure the initial reaction is why, or how could that be, but here is the reality behind Reich. Fair or not, the Colts have won one playoff game in 4 years with him as their head coach. And I understand a lot of things, and truly a lot of things, have won against Reich since he became the head coach of the Colts, most notably, of course, being franchise quarterback Andrew Luck, retiring unexpectedly a few weeks before the season started back in 2019. And in 4 years as the Colts head coach, they've went 37-28 in this span, with a 1-2 playoff record, and their lone playoff win coming back in 2018 against the Texans, then lost the ensuing week to the Chiefs by 3 scores. Their 2020 playoff appearance came against the Buffalo Bills, and I always felt bad for Indy within this because they were a good team that had just bad luck in terms of their first round opponent. But a large reason why Reich's seat is warmer than you'd think is, fair or not, the Colts may want to move on if they do not win a playoff game or two this year. He is 60 years old and will turn 61 late in this year, but if Indy misses the playoffs with another 9-8 record and not necessarily losing in week 18 to the Jags like they did last year, but if they miss the playoffs, it very well may be a, hey Frank, thank you, but this isn't working out, versus like when a Matt Patricia got fired from Detroit, who was just a flat-out bad head coach throughout his entire tenure. There will be legitimate worry about being able to win games when it matters most, and I don't think all of this falls on Frank, because it certainly doesn't, but I also believe with the loaded AFC, it's going to be incredibly difficult, not just for Indy, but for everyone to go far in that conference. And that's a reason why I think Reich's seat is warm, but not nearly as hot as other head coaches in today's video. This is more of a possibility, where I do think Matt Rule will be gone at the end of the year unless the Panthers make the playoffs. Next up is Mike McCarthy of the Dallas Cowboys, who has large expectations entering this fall. Dallas lost by 6 points at home to the San Francisco 49ers in the wild card round of the playoffs last year, but within that game there were several decisions made regarding clock management and punting fairly late that at the time I'm sure Cowboys fans were screaming at their TV, something along the lines of, why are we doing this? And quite frankly, I don't blame them. And the Cowboys lost Amari Cooper and Randy Gregory this offseason, as well as Cedric Wilson and guard Connor Williams. The Eagles improved a lot as well, and the big thing with the NFC East is there has been no repeat division winner in nearly 20 years. Eventually that will happen, but will it be this year is another question. And if Dallas does not win the division and they themselves finish with a 9-8 record and miss the playoffs, combined with how their playoff loss ended last year, McCarthy's seat is indeed going to be warm. Jerry Jones is unlike any other owner in the league, and he wants another championship. To be clear, he's not unlike any other owner that wants a championship, because they all do. He's unlike any other owner in the fact of how public and how aggressive he is regarding that. Dallas has not been to the NFC Championship game since 1995, and with this window the Cowboys are currently in Dak's prime that is, there is a good chance Jerry cans McCarthy if they cannot get the results this year. There's a chance they move on sooner rather than later. And with that being said, that's all I have for today's video. I hope you enjoyed, and if you did, now is the time I ask you to please leave a like and subscribe to the channel, as it would truly mean the world. And until next time, as always, please be safe and have a great day. Love you guys.